he was made for a sitcom. He was always the reactor. So how easy to step into a sitcom and just take these imaginary characters he's been listening to and write words for them.
Even though Bob started out as a stand-up, it's still acting. It's not joke-telling. He creates scenes, he creates situations.
Well, Mrs. Finley, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bill you for the cancellation unless you have a pretty darn good excuse. That's a pretty darn good excuse. What was it, a boy or girl?
What's different about Bob is Bob is a regular guy. He just happens to be a genius at being a regular guy.
You're the most memorable character I've ever met, but for the life of me, I can't remember why.
Everybody's had a salesman come to the door that's sort of like a Bob Newhart character. Everybody's been to a dentist or a shrink who has a piece of Bob Newhart.
Bye.
Bye, Dr. Hartley.
There's a lot more to Bob than in the characters he played, but I guess if you'll, in time, when we'll look at the body of the work, we'll have more clues as to more of who he is.
I'd like to start out by telling you a little about myself. I've made some guest appearances on television you may have seen, and 2 record albums you may have heard. Before that, I was a former accountant, and before that, a former child.
The oversimplistic view of the 50s, but it was somewhat accurate, is the African Americans were the musicians, the Italians were the singers, and the comics were Jews. And here comes this very waspy guy doing the opposite of everyone else, and brilliantly, and all of a sudden just owning a piece of comedy and comic geography that was never even there before.
It was kind of a new approach to humor at that time. There weren't many quiet comedians because vaudeville, you actually had to yell at people in the theater, and they got used to doing that.
Hey, what are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at the race.
What race?
The human race.
The human race?
Uh-huh.
What are you laughing at? You don't belong to it.
Most comedians in the 30s and the 40s and part of the 50s were, for the most part, trained in vaudeville. It's another kind of projection, another kind of education, or lack of same.
Right after World War II, comedy still was filled with one-liners.
I'm not well. I really am. I'm sick. I got to go back to my psychiatrist. I went to a psychiatrist 3 months ago, told him everything I know. Now he's doing my act at the Shapery in Chicago.
If you didn't like one joke, don't go anyplace, because another one was coming along right away.
He ain't doing so good with it either, I'll tell you.
Comedy started changing a little bit, where it was more personality-driven, and some of it was political, some of it wasn't, but the style was definitely different.
Society itself had changed considerably after World War II.
It stood to reason that the newer comedians would be, if not street smarter, more intellectual, better educated. If you can equate change with revolution, it was a revolution, because it was a changing of the guard. The times got tougher and the jokes got tougher.
I'm not going to attack the Republicans because they're not united. Once they're united, I'm going to attack them. Just for this old time's sake, President Eisenhower has been hired by the American Broadcasting Company, a larger network than this, as a commentator. He's taken a sudden interest in politics and become...
Newhart packaged it differently than the others. He hit his targets hard, but they didn't even realize it.
See, Mayo, nobody can be popular over here unless he's big with the press. I got the sport pictures you said, but we couldn't use them, Mayo. But you see, what I described to you was how the president throws out the first ball at the opening of the baseball season. Yeah, but the picture of you firing the first shot with a firing squad...
Bob is not of the mold of the angst comedian complaining and angry at life. However, the material is targeted, absolutely targeted. Something's bugging him.
It was just our way of looking at life. But there was no cabal. I mean, we didn't all get together and say, look, we've got to change comedy. I mean, comedy's kind of subversive to begin with. You know, it's anti-establishment. The submarine commander routine of mine was a result of having been in service and and seeing the inefficiencies of the military.
Looking back on the mutiny, I think a lot of the trouble there stemmed from the fact that you men weren't coming to me with your problems. As I explained to you before we started out, the door to my office is always open. I think you know why it's always open. That was stolen. I'd like that.
I guess if there's a thread running through all the routines, it would probably be the last sane man left in America. There's this man, me, who keeps looking at the world and saying, this is crazy.
At that time, Bob was not the kind of guy who would, who was doing nightclub entertaining and going down, listen, Saturday night I'm opening down here. That wasn't the case. He was just a funny guy in the office and was looking for a way out.
Bob was still living with his parents in Chicago, which probably contributed to his belief that, well, I'm not going to go anywhere. Here I am, an Irish son, almost 30. I'm still sitting at home living in my parents' place.
And there were times I thought I was crazy. There were times I thought, boy, you have really screwed up your life.
We thought of Bob as being a funny guy whose future was a little foggy.
They were getting married and raising families, and I was working at the unemployment office. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have been successful in comedy. I had to find out whether I would be.
We really had a whole collection of little jobs along the way, and that's part of probably what was either, you could say, difficult or challenging for him.
I at one point worked for the Illinois State Unemployment Compensation Board. We got $55 a week. The claimants got $45, and they only had to come in one day a week. And so it took me a couple days to figure that out. I figured I've got to get fired from this job and wind up on the other side of the counter.
The menial jobs were actually quite important. He suddenly realized how deeply he hated the bureaucracy of modern life.
The retirement party routine was a result of having worked as an accountant, because I saw it firsthand.
I don't suppose that it ever occurred to any of you that I had to get half stoned every morning to make it down to this crummy job. You'd be smiling and easygoing if you were gassed all the time.
It's just my way of dealing with life and finding the humor in life.
Ed Gallagher, he bumped into Bob through a mutual friend, and they took tape recorders, and they did these man on the street or telephone exchanges and so on.
Ed was in advertising, and I, at that time, was still an accountant. And I would get so bored at the end of the day with accounting that I would call Ed up. We would improvise routines.
We got trains coming through here daily. I mean, we can't...
Speaking of trains, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it looks to me as if those two trains are going to crash. Are you going to do anything about it?
No, I never got a DO7 on those two. I can't touch these levers until I get a DO7.
You mean to say you're just going to sit here and do absolutely nothing?
Well, if we were to do away with a DO7, we'd have nothing but plain chaos around this.
We put 10 routines on an acetate and sent them to 100 stations, got replies from 3. It was a great training ground for writing because it forced me to write. It taught me the discipline of writing a 5-minute routine 5 times a week.
Gallagher ended up moving to New York, and there was Bob Newhart, now a comedy team without a partner.
I was left now either trying to find another partner, another straight man, or going off on my own as a single, and decided to go off on my own.
Bob Newhart here. Hello. Hello.
Bob Newhart here.
Hello. Hello, Bob Newhart.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello, Bob Newhart here.
The telephone became his partner, and the team was born again.
You found a shell on the beach. That strikes you as unusual, does it, Willard, finding a shell on a beach? This one does. Why, doesn't it sound like the ocean when you hold it up to your ear, Willard? Oh, that kind of shell. Well, it's probably a dud, Willard. I'll send someone over first thing in the morning and they... Oh, is that so? Gosh, Willard, I was kind of hoping that was your watch making that noise.
Bob Newhart was a one-man comedy team. He was listening to him and was reacting to him. And that was a genius of the comedy.
You've got nothing to worry about as long as it's ticking.
Great comics and great actors were always great listeners. The skill of the straight man was always to be the ultimate listener.
I think the first comedian who used a telephone as a prop was Georgie Jessel. Hello, Mama.
Hello, Mama. Well, I'm terribly sorry I couldn't come to the party last night. No, what was the party about? Mrs. Kahn had a silver wedding. Well, say, wait a minute, how can she have a silver wedding? She's only married 3 years. Oh, they needed silver.
Shelley Berman did it, and his were very, very, very funny bits.
No, I'm not disputing you. I mean, I just, you're the doctor. I just, wondering what effect 2 aspirin would have upon excessive bleeding.
The audience supplies the unheard portion of the conversation. So they participate. At the end, they applaud themselves for having figured out. If you really look at any of the telephone routines, what I am saying is not funny at all.
Look, Willard, now this may be dangerous, but if we can save one human life, that's the way you feel about it.
It's what's unheard that's funny.
What he did when he wasn't speaking, and what you imagined, and what he caused you to imagine was being said on the other end of the line, was such a great art.
I don't think anyone's done it since him. Probably they retired his telephone jersey. I mean, they know no one could do it better than Bob.
I was a disc jockey in Chicago, and Ed Gallagher came to see me in 1959. He said, I've got this great tape. And I listened to the tape, and I thought this fellow he was working with, this Bob Newhart, was fantastic. So I played 1 or 2 of the tracks on the air, and people thought that Bob Newhart was just great.
In that time, Bob got a lot of publicity. I think that started him on his way.
I was associate director at NBC, so we're doing a local Emmy show. I said to Newhart, can you write something for that night, something appropriate, about press? And he did. He wrote Abraham Lincoln's press agent. Blew everybody away.
You changed 7 to 87? I understand it means the same thing, Abe. Well, Abe, that's meant to be a grabber. Abe, we test marketed that in Erie, and they went out of their minds about it. Trust. Well, Abe, it's sort of like Mark Anthony saying, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, I've got something I want to tell you."
The really good routines come full blown. They don't come in pieces. You give birth to them. Is really what you do. The Abe Lincoln routine, as a piece of writing, it's my favorite because it may be more true today than it was even when I originally conceived it, which was 1958.
Abe, hold on. They come up with a thing on Grant. Okay, right. Good. Yeah, oh, beautiful. Abe, listen to this. They got a beautiful squelch on Grant. Right. The next time they bug you about Grant's drinking, right, you tell them you're going to find out what brand he drinks, and send a case of it to all your other generals. No, it's like the brand was the reason he won. No. Abe, use it, it's funny. But, trust me on this, will you?
He's had a lot of stammerers follow him.
So you drove left and turned right?
Mr. Carlin.
Really? It took him an hour to say really. And
He said, really? He says, I don't do that. I don't stutter like that. That's just for the comedy. Trust me. That's the way he talks.
I mean, I never said, oh, look, there's nobody out there with a stammer. You know, so that would be a good, maybe that's what I'll do.
In 1959, Warner Brothers Records had just started. We really started from zero. The big problem was that Warner Brothers couldn't get any big-name artists.
They had to find one hit, otherwise they were out of business. And so I told them about this incredible comic that hadn't been recorded by anybody, and I played him this material.
I think before the first track was over, which was the Abraham Lincoln one, I said, hey, call this guy. We're going to sign him. He was really something. It was different from everybody else who was making comedy records. He sounded so much like an ordinary person who was trapped in a world that didn't understand him.
They said, okay, we like it, we like what we hear, and we'd like to record you at your next nightclub.
And then there was dead silence. And I said, well, what's wrong?
I said, well, we have a problem there because I've never played a nightclub.
I went to everybody I knew. They all said, oh, yeah, it's very interesting, but it's a little strange. No, we don't think so.
So I contacted Tweet Hogan to act as Bob's manager, and Tweet finally booked him into a hotel in Texas.
I walked out in February of 1960, terrified out of my mind. But it's something you learn probably the first time you ever walk on a stage, that you can't show any fear. So I pretended like I knew what I was doing.
That was a wonderful turn. It's hard for me to believe you only had 2 lessons after you make a turn like that. Are you sure you haven't had more now? Well, I find that very difficult to believe. One little thing, this is a one-way street. Well, no, actually it was partially my fault, you see, but you were in the left-hand lane and you were signaling left, and I just more or less assumed you were going to turn left.
There was a drunken woman in the front row, and she kept saying, that's a bunch of crap, and just kept repeating it. And so we listened to the tape, and she was clearer than I was. So we had 2 shows, 2 shows on Saturday to get the album, which we did.
Remember, you're going to watch the rearview mirror. Remember, we covered that? The red light blinded you. The flashing red light blinded you? The flashing red light on the car you hit blinded you. Yes, officer, she was just telling me about it.
What an opportunity for utter failure. Gosh, I asked him if he was frightened or scared when he did it, and he said, you mean still?
The uniform of the day on Madison Avenue was the button-down collar. So somebody at Warner Brothers Records called it the button-down mine. I had nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, I had to ask somebody what it meant.
It made Warner Brothers. The album became the best-selling album in the country.
So here's little Bob Newhart. Never did anything like this in his life. The first time that he talks into a microphone in front of an audience, he comes up with a multi-million seller that outsells everything else. Unbelievable, but true.
This is my original own personal Button Down Mine album. I never thought of Bob as a political comedian. Listening back on it, there's a lot more content than I certainly realized when I was 10 years old.
That album outperformed every album made by Elvis Presley, except Presley's Blue Hawaii album. It also outperformed on the charts every album made by the Beatles in the decade of the 1960s.
I mean, I really wasn't prepared for it. I saw the album as maybe an adjunct to maybe a nightclub career, if that.
Because it was such a big-selling album, it also helped the sales of other comedy albums.
And they were revolutionary because, you know, we had our albums for music. We didn't have them for comedy.
They weren't even called comedy albums. They were called spoken word. That's how new the whole thing was.
There might be people who have only heard the records and never went to a club. Being able to take the comedian home with you, that was completely new. And it was something you could keep. It was yours. It was your piece of that talent.
Plus the fact that nightclubs were kind of pricey as far as college kids were concerned. Apparently what happened was they would take our comedy routines and they'd buy pizza and beer and they'd play them and sit around and we were their nightclub. So it was a sea change really in comedy.
All right, do you want to pick up the packages, Mrs. Selkirk? All right, now get on the bus. All right, now fumble for your change. That's the way. All right, drop it in the coin box. All right, now you start heading back toward the back of the bus. Okay, hit your brake. All right, hit the accelerator. Now your brake again. Now the accelerator. Do you all see how she spun all the way to the front of the bus?
Once the album hit in 1960, he was booked everywhere. He played radio stations, nightclubs, TV guest appearances.
He seemed to have stepped into that crown overnight. There wasn't a Bob Newhart, and then there was a Bob Newhart who was a huge star who could bring viewers onto the Ed Sullivan Show.
Well, there weren't very many awards to be won, but Bob cleaned up. His album won Album of the Year. It also won Best New Artist of the Year. Of course, we immediately began thinking in terms of a second album. Well, Button-Down Mind Strikes Back.
Have any of you ever been to Hawaii before? This woman right here. It's sort of liver-shaped, isn't it, ma'am? It's more around. Ma'am, would you mind stopping by the cabin as we're coming in and pointing it out to us? We sure appreciate it. And hope you have a very nice flight. Thank you very much.
Bob had this Midwestern, quiet, almost unprofessional approach to comedy.
Just as Johnny Carson always was this guy from Nebraska, Bob is this guy from Chicago.
Bob Newhart was born on September 5th, 1929, to a predominantly Irish Catholic family in Chicago.
Comedians are supposed to have this tortured childhood. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I would say mine was fairly dysfunctional. I would say my father and I didn't really have a great relationship. I don't like to put it on that basis. I don't like to say that's why I'm the way I am.
Somehow, Bob has been able to identify his pain with the average guy out there, and that's why the average guy, which is most of us, identified with what he talks about.
I would see that I was from this upper middle class family. Something happened between the time my father got his paycheck and the time he got home, because we weren't exactly upper middle class that I was aware of.
His mother had a dry sense of humor that really taught Bob a lot about humor. He and his younger sister used to listen to all of the comedians on the radio.
I would say anybody who was good was an influence. I would watch them and say, oh, why did that work? And, oh, because they did this.
Bob's timing, I think, is very similar to Jack Benny's, who was a master at timing.
Jack was the bravest comedian that I've ever seen. He wasn't afraid of silence. He wasn't afraid of how long it took to get to the punchline, because he knew the punchline would pay off.
Now, how would you want me to sign this? Like, love Jack Benny or sincerely Jack Benny?
Oh, you'll think I'm silly.
No, I won't. How do you want me to sign this?
Tony Curtis.
I don't think you can teach somebody timing. I think it's something you hear in your head. It's like a metronome.
The patience that Benny had, setting something up, paying something off, I can see that in Bob. Bob is kind of this funny fungus who will allow himself to grow on you for a while, you know?
If I were to sum up in one word what I do, it's probably I'm a minimalist. I like to say the most I can with the least.
Newhart was such a hot young property that all three networks said, let's give him a TV show. Here's TV coming along. NBC won because NBC said, we'll let you do what you want to do. It's important for a comedian to have that kind of control.
Some people wonder if it isn't unusual for an accountant to become a comedian. It's unusual for a good accountant to become a comedian. I was a very poor accountant. As for the show, it's going to have to speak for itself. Actually, not altogether. We do have an announcer to speak for it. An old friend of mine from Chicago, Mr. Dan Sorkin.
Another thing about Newhart's generosity, he asked me to be the announcer on the show, and the NBC people said, listen, this kid in Chicago has never, he's never done a network television show before. We've got this, this network announcer who's really good at doing these things. You won't have to worry about him. And he stood fast and said, I'm not going to do the show unless he does the show.
Well, Dan had a lot to do with the record album, which had a lot to do with my getting the television show.
You ready, Dan?
Yeah, I'm ready, but the tone of your voice suggests that I'm derelict sometimes in my duties.
Why don't you stop your whining and set up the movie?
I think I was the first disc jockey to play his records. They forget in a hurry, don't they?
Sorry, guy. I haven't been myself.
He had this natural feel for the camera. He treated the camera like it was someone that he was either talking to or performing in front of.
The big thing about Bob is you think he's there to check the gas meter, and he turns out to be one of the funniest people you've ever met.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised to have my own show, too. I guess with all the sex and violence gone, the networks figured I was all that was left.
One of the Newhart characteristics that makes him such a great comedian is his fearless use of silence and his great ability to use it well.
Lowell and Hardy had the most wonderful space and air and silence that holds up and under scrutiny today. And the same way that Bob Newhart's little looks and takes and wonderful air of waiting, the great comedians of silence and sound.
It's Adolf Hitler sitting next to me. Don't look at him. Don't look at him. I said it's Adolf Hitler. Hi.
One of the reasons he works so well on television is because he has a very expressive face. He just can project so much with a look and a beat and a blink.
I'd like to start out by thanking our home economics class for the wonderful hors d'oeuvres they prepared. This was prepared by Miss Hines and the 2B.
It's wonderful watching him wind up to a joke, you know? You know it's coming, and then he gives it to you, and it's terrific.
Oh, here's another thing I wish you'd pass along to the children. It may have more force coming from you. There seems to be some confusion about the fire drill. The fire drill is composed of two parts, leaving the school and returning to it.
In the meantime, I was fixed up on a blind date by Buddy Hackett.
He said, oh, you have just a girl for you. Because you're Catholic, right? I said, yeah, I'm Catholic. Yeah, well, she's Catholic, too.
He was cute. He was fun. Very, very bright. You go out in the dating world, and nobody listens. And he listened. I thought, boy, this is a very special person.
She was very down to earth. She wasn't really awestruck by television.
And I really didn't know who he was. I'd heard the name, but I didn't have his albums. And I didn't really know what he did until he was doing the television show.
I think I taped the show on Wednesday, and we would go out afterwards. And she appeared once or twice as an extra on the television show.
He was very insecure about what he was doing. And to be thrown in so fast, I mean, this was 1961, 62, and he had just started in 60.
Looking back, I'm not sure why I decided to do it. I probably shouldn't have done it. I probably wasn't experienced enough to pull it off. I was very uncomfortable in sketches. I wasn't very good in sketches.
He'd always say, they're going to catch on to me one day. You know, they're going to know that this is all a sham. They're going to go, okay, Mr. Newhart, we know you don't know what you're doing, and they're going to come and get me, you know.
Oh, you found the rating. Good. What is it? A -4? How can there be a minus rating? Not only is no one watching it, but several people you called without TV sets had heard about it and didn't think they'd watch it if they had one.
That year, I won an Emmy, a Peabody Award, and a pink slip from NBC. All in the same year.
I just don't think Bob was traditional. His sensibility was ahead of its time. Newhart spun something in an entirely different way, and that, with 3 networks, isn't so commercially acceptable.
And although we are going off this year, and it doesn't look like we're going to be on next year, you can't really feel too badly about a year where you made a couple friends.
He's very graceful, and he's a very good athlete, and he's just so lazy about being a physical comic. And, you know, I would sometimes say, get up off your ass. Jesus Christ, Bob, you're so good. And then when he does, he's just superlative.
We were married in January 1963. Well, we were Catholic, and Rob was born in November. Then Tim came along, and then Jen, our first girl, and then Courtney, our second daughter.
I knew I had to get something kind of steady. Before, there was no one depending on me, and now there were people depending on me.
It frightened him. It frightened him a lot. He used to run to the mailbox all the time, waiting for that check for the last thing, because we were always up against the gun.
So along came the show, which on paper sounded like it couldn't miss. Carol Burnett, Katerina Valeni, myself, Dom DeLuise. It was a variety show.
It was called The Entertainers. It was sort of doomed from the start. There was a disjointedness about the entire program. In addition, the producers wanted to attract a younger audience, so they'd have rock and rollers on. This was great, but this was not Bob Newhart's demographic.
Good evening and welcome to The Entertainers. Tonight we have something extra special for the teenagers among you. Those new singing sensations from England, Chad and Jeremy. I know you teenagers still have a lot more screams still pent up in your system, so if I could just hear one more loud, adoring scream. Fine, that scream was for me. Now I'd like to hear one for Chad and Jeremy.
Art Buchwald was on the show. Now, my material was not going over at all with the preteens. His material was not going over well with the preteens. Because he would fly in on Friday and say,
well, I guess you saw what Congress did this week.
And, of course, they just stared at him and said things like, what's Congress? So the show, I think, lasted just the 1 year.
That was a point in his career that maybe I'm not doing the right thing. And it wouldn't have surprised me at that time had he just said, look, I can't do this anymore. It took a lot out of him.
Television itself was changing. The Smothers Brothers show really annoyed the censors at CBS with a lot of the material they did.
I did the Smothers Show. Was much more politically oriented than anything that had been on television previously.
Well, Dad, tonight I am put on my velveteen bell-bottoms with my high-collar flower shirt, and I'm gonna go out with my weirdo friends, and we're gonna play electric guitar as loud as we can, and we're gonna drink, and we're gonna take in a wild orgy or two. You wanna come along?
No, son, I think your mother and I'll just stay home and get stoned.
He could have become very subversive if he so chose to, because it had such a soft delivery to it. But Bob Newhart didn't ever go there, regardless of his personal viewpoints.
There was a temptation to be more risque, to be edgy. I never felt comfortable doing it. It was like putting on a sweater that the shoulder just never felt comfortable, you know?
The man who is as specific and unique as Bob just doesn't fit in everywhere.
He was just present as his own unique self doing this comedy, separate from what that political atmosphere was, almost as if he knew that eventually it all will change anyway, and if I just do this, I'll outlast everyone, which he did.
Frank Sinatra, Jerry Lewis Dean Martin, Bob Newhart. I mean, that's as close to being royalty as American entertainers had at that time.
The Entertainers went off in 1964. I did stand-up. I toured, played Vegas.
And it was probably most unlikely place for Bob to be, because they're rough there. But Bob never had any problem. He has total command of an audience that is drunk.
Looking back, I was growing as a performer. Some of the abject terror that I had was I wasn't quite as terrified as when I first started out.
We tried to keep the family together in sometimes very difficult circumstances, and that came first.
We were a young family and having children and try to live as normal a life as we could.
I'd like to bring my little daughter Courtney up, and she's very sweet, and it's kind of traditional, and I hope you welcome her.
If I played Vegas, the kids would come up generally Friday right after school, and then they go home Sunday.
We'd keep them up until we went to dinner, which was between shows, which was around 10:30. Oh, we made our mistakes along with a lot of other parents. But I think for the most part, they look back and they say, oh, Mom and Dad did try and do something that was pretty much out of the ordinary.
His first movie was called Hell is for Heroes, made in 1962.
I always call it a kind of a lighthearted look at World War II.
He's actually very good in it. At one point, he's given the job of fooling the Germans by talking on the telephone to nobody. And they must have thought, well, who can talk on the telephone to nobody? Bob Newhart.
Don't send them up here. Sir, I have 5 men in each foxhole now. I don't have any room for any more, sir. Have you tried Charlie Company, sir? Oh, I see. Well, sir, there's still a war going on in Japan, you know, sir. You might send them over there.
The greatest freedom is stand-up, because you're just allowed to go anywhere you want to go. With a movie, it's There are lines, you have to say it over and over and over and over again. But I knew it was something I had to learn how to do. Catch-22 was a surreal experience.
Having been cast as Major was just, oh my goodness, this is just fantastic.
Sergeant, from now on, I don't want anyone to come in and see me while I'm in my office. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. What do I say to people who want to come in and see you while you're in your office?
Tell them I'm in and ask them to wait.
For how long?
Until I've left.
And then what do I do with them?
I don't care.
May I send people in to see you after you've left?
Yes.
You won't be here then, will you?
No.
I see, sir. Will that be all?
Also, Sergeant, I don't want you coming in while I'm in my office asking me if there's anything you can do for me. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. When should I come in your office and ask you if there's anything I can do for you?
When I'm not there.
Newhart can get away with lines like that because he's so real. He's so simple, so subtle, so American that he can do surrealism and get away with it.
He is that guy that is totally lost in his own authority. Doesn't know what to do with it, doesn't know why he has it, is burdened by everything. That character is perfect. I can't imagine anyone else doing it.
When the movie came out, it came out around the same time as MASH. So here were two anti-establishment, anti-war movies. MASH stole the thunder. MASH was the hit. And I don't think the culture at that time could have stood two anti-establishment, anti-military movies.
I prefer the pace of television to the pace of movies. It's really a totally different discipline. I prefer television where it was more like a play.
Oh, hi, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Hi, Bob. Oh, hi, Bob. Oh, hi, Bob.
Welcome home, Bob.
Were you expecting someone else?
My manager said, would you want to do a weekly sitcom? And I said, yeah, because it would give me time at home. I wouldn't be on the road as much, and would give our family kind of a normal life.
I was writing partners with Lorenzo Music. We had a deal to write a pilot. We kind of thought about it, okay, well, Bob Liston's funny. It just kind of came to us of going through all the different occupations.
So they said, what would you think about playing a psychiatrist? I said, well, I think I'd like to play a psychologist because it deals with less severely disturbed people. I didn't think we should be making fun of bipolar and schizophrenics and people like that, much as my natural inclination is to do that.
I got a call from a CBS executive, and they said, we read your presentation, it's great, it sounds like Bob, but does he have to be a psychologist? And it was like, well, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds benign these days, but I think that, the network was a little gun-shy about dealing with crazy people.
I only had one problem this week.
Well, why don't you tell me about it?
Yesterday morning, I was possessed by the devil.
In the late 50s and early 60s, it was unusual for a stand-up comedian to have a show.
All in the Family was completely staffed by stage actors, as was MASH, as was Mary Tyler Moore. Bob was the only guy who went from being a sound to a face to being a full-blooded character.
You may not think you're saying anything by not saying anything, but actually you are. You see, I'm a trained observer of people, and I've learned a great deal about you. There is one piece of information that I need to complete the picture. Would you mind if I ask, what the hell do you want?
The secret is that they found Bob Newhart, who's an edgy guy, under it all, and put him in a softer format. And that's when the pieces really came together.
The biggest thing a stand-up brings to a role is the integrity of the character, because you know what has worked for you over the years.
Bob had that real gift of being a real actor, whether he knew it or not. So I think he was completely prepared for going into situation comedy.
Mrs. Harold, we've been over this before, and as you said yourself, you overeat because having a beautiful body you feel threatens you. And for
some reason, having a fat body doesn't threaten you. Well, I'm happy to hear you've been able to control it. Mrs. Harold? Yeah, I can't understand you with your mouth full.
And so you can bring in all the nutsies of the world, and it's perfectly normal to let these crazies in.
Dr. Hartley, I'm sure he has girlfriends, but he denies it.
Well, of course, Todd's 13 now. Very many comedians are overpowering. Bob is underpowering. He's a minimalist.
He would make a line funny by not spinning it.
Hey, little mama, I'm coming home to you.
He always did less. He did less than you thought humanly possible. And consequently, the lines were 10 times as funny.
Bob would listen with such sincerity to really crazy things and try to make them seem not crazy. And you saw that struggle going on all the time.
Writing Bob Reacts, that was too much for him. That was like, what do you mean? What do you mean reacts? he just reacted.
What seems to be the problem?
Well, Doctor, Frank here wants to break up the act and go out on his own.
He listens to other people and doesn't just wait for his turn to be funny. He's a great audience, and that does set him apart.
Why don't you give us a minute by yourselves? Grab yourself a cup of coffee, will you?
You want me to go outside?
Do I stutter, Doc?
You don't fool around with his delivery. Don't ever stick your finger in there because he knows what he's doing.
Someone said the show is running long, and could you run your speeches together a little more? Not pause so much. And I explained to them that the stammer had gotten me, at that point, a home in Beverly Hills, and I wasn't about to change it, so maybe they better take out some words.
Look, I don't know what's going on between you and my wife.
Nothing. She's just living with me. In my apartment. Mainly with my wife. I'm hardly ever there. I'm here. Like I'm here now.
He created the stammer as its own vocabulary. Each time he had to, wait to say something, there was a reason behind it.
An essential part of comedy is tension. That's what the stammer does. That's what the stutter does. It builds a tension that is then relieved.
Of an edgy guy. Now we can pretend like there's just a story with funny people. But you have a deeper funny guy in the lead.
There was something that he brought to it that was like the best of what you could get in that area, which was low-key, natural. He always keeps it honest.
He didn't like to rehearse, which made for some nervousness, but we got kind of used to it.
Like very many comedians, Bob doesn't like to wear out the material. He gets the material, he knows how to do it, but he just wants to get that show in front of an audience.
Okay, the first thing we need is a roasting pan. First thing we need is an ice pick. Somebody cooking a hat.
Bob plays a very good drunk. It's a singular drunk. The rest of us, male members of the cast, I think started to play the same drunk because he was so successful at doing it during rehearsal. We just started, oh, that's the way to be funny as a drunk.
Mugu Guy Pan.
That's what I want to. Dr. J. Robinson wants Mugu Guy Pan.
And more Mugu.
You ever just heard about it? He said Mugu Goo Goo. He said Mugu Goo Goo.
Right. You said Mugu Goo Goo. Maybe I'm ordering Chinese baby food.
I think someone pointed it out. I don't know who. So we can't all stand that way and talk like that and slur the same words.
Thank you very much.
Go
How's the show going? I've seen a couple of them, and I think it's a great show. I think Bob's a very talented and very funny man, and you're delightful in the show.
Oh, thank you. I love it. Well, it's your fault that I'm on that show anyhow.
Somebody told me that one of the reasons, although we're not taking credit for it, that
Well,
they saw you being an idiot here one night or something, or acting like an idiot, and
In my usual style. No, that's the
Is that what
truth.
happened?
The producers were looking for a woman, to play Bob Newhart's wife, and they happened the night Bob and I were on.
Right.
Which was pure coincidence. They saw me, and I read the poem about being a football widow, and they said,
Right.
there she is, there's the idiot. And that's how I wound up with the show.
That's great.
The casting of Suzanne Plachette was key to us because she was totally the opposite of Bob in many ways, and yet she was soft and sensitive in certain areas, and yet she played mad great.
Bob, I hate the way you argue. You're so casual, you never yell.
I know why you're saying I never yell, because you want to yell, but you don't want to yell first.
Oh, that's another thing that infuriates me. You always think you know why I'm saying what I'm saying.
That is not true, and I know why you said that.
Oh!
Because before that, you know, it was always the wife who was smarter, and they were screaming, and they were yelling, and the husband was the putz, and, you know. And often they didn't love each other. They did not love each other. And here we were, intellectually equal.
Married, loving people who, in moments of rest, have this one annoying little thing they want to talk about.
The bedroom scenes were some of the funniest we ever did. That was, again, a kind of a look at the way people actually relate.
She's really serious about this, isn't she?
Well, it happens to all psychology students. Happened to me. I was a sophomore at Loyola University.
Can we reminisce later? Maybe tomorrow. It's getting late.
Yeah, remind me to tell you about Amy sometime.
So one of them would snap the lights off. Then the light would go on, and the argument would get hot.
Bob, tell me about Amy.
It's late, Emma.
No, it's not.
The society was changing so much that just the idea of having these two people in the same bed was virtually revolutionary on television. Some of the early shows that showed couples in bed were The Munsters and The Brady Bunch. Those kinds of shows were not aimed at adults, and that was completely different.
Think of the marriage that we presented. It was very modern. You know, we're talking about 1972 to 1978. You had a working wife. You had a couple that were sexual. You had, although Bob wasn't too happy with that.
Why don't we go out to dinner tonight? That'll be fun. No. Well, why don't we go to the movies? No. Or why don't we just go to bed early?
That movies isn't a bad idea.
That was new ground at that time, and no children.
Carol's thinking about looking for a new job. I got creamed in Monopoly, and it was just a terrible day.
Oh, then I guess now isn't a good time to tell you that I'm pregnant.
I guess not. What?
Even though he's a family man extraordinaire and has 4 kids and loves them and worships them, he wanted to do a show about grown-ups and their foibles and all the crazy things they get into.
I don't want to be the stupid daddy who keeps getting himself in trouble, and then the wife and the kids huddle around, and how are we going to get daddy out of this pickle he's gotten himself into?
Anytime that subject came up, he and Suzanne both were just said, that's not our show. They were 2 mature adults who wanted to do a show about 2 mature adults.
And at one point, they wrote a pregnant show.
I called up the producer. I said, I read the script. And he said, what did you think of it? I said, I think it's very funny. It's a very funny script. He said, oh, good. We were kind of concerned about it. I said, no, it's very funny. He said, oh, good. And I said, then who are you going to get to play Bob? He said, oh, okay.
Bob had a lot of input. When the show was called The Bob Newhart Show.
Bob is an intellect. It's Bob's view of the world. And he's very, very smart about staying very close to who he is or who he's most comfortable presenting himself as.
We never intended to blaze a trail. We always just wanted to do an honest, real show about real people.
If you really care about a relationship, you shouldn't be so willing to get out of it.
Me? I'm not the one who wants to give it up. It's him.
Well, then talk to him. Him?
Yes, him.
Wait a minute. This guy's gay.
Isn't that nice? Just what the world needs, a little more gaiety.
The idea of putting Bob in that exact spot and asking him to react in an honest way and take a chance on what people were going to think his position was at that time. And that was 30 years ago. It may have been fairly early in the coming out of that subject on television.
They're not ready for me.
Well, it's really their problem if they can't handle the fact that you're, Right. I mean, they were probably a little surprised by it. I know I was...
In the early days of the show, he probably didn't get the credit that he deserved as an actor because everybody thought, oh, well, he's so funny, it's just so easy. But in our show, there were moments when he really just, it was pure acting. It was wonderful.
It's been said that today's psychologist is nothing more than a con man, a snake oil salesman, flim-flamming innocent people, peddling cures for everything from nail biting to a lousy love life. And I agree. We'll ask Dr. Hartley to defend himself after this message.
We're not thought of as a groundbreaking show. Mary was cutting edge, more cutting edge. We were just quietly funny.
When the Emmys came out, Bob and I would look the next day and said, nobody's on this.
I do remember saying to Bob, well, no wonder we don't get Emmy nominations. I said, we're not, doing anything new and fresh. And he said, we're telling little stories that are timeless. And it turned out he was right.
We tended to shy away from taking stands on issues. I didn't think we were educators. I thought we were entertainers. While I have certain things I feel very strongly about, I didn't feel it was my job to impose them on the public.
I've decided to take a new direction in my career, and I've accepted a post at a small college in Oregon. The only thing I regret is that I'm going to have to give up my practice.
To be the star of a situation comedy, I think there are pressures, and lots of them.
You can't have your name on a show like the Bob Newhart show and not be anxious week to week by the ratings, how it's being thought of. It's a burden.
At the end of the 6th year, even though certainly we could have gone on, I think it was the right time to end it.
Mr. Carlin, are you sure you're all right? Of course. See you in the funny papers.
Don't go! I'll pay anything. I'll buy your car. I'll make you need a man. Anything. I'll build you a gymnasium.
It's the comedian knowing when to get off. You do your act, you do one encore, and you get off.
The last episode of Bob was the saddest night of my life. Bob, you never know when he's sad because he always looks sad. He's got that face, but he doesn't show his emotion much. Like me, I cry at a circus. And and the girls were just, oh, Marsha Wallace, oh.
Our finale, I just remember sobbing all day, just crying.
The truth is, I'm really going to miss you guys.
Bob has light and dark and shadows. I mean, he's an interesting, complicated man. He's private. There are pieces of himself that he keeps for himself or his family.
There wasn't a lot of emotion in his family, so it was very hard for him to show emotion. He's afraid to get too close. He's afraid of being hurt.
The ending of the Bob Newhart show, it was a difficult week. Everybody knew it was the last show. And I always said, I'd like to present what I think is the best cast on television. And as I was saying that, I realized that was going to be the last time I was going to be saying it. And then the full enormity of ending the show suddenly came crashing down.
This is, kind of difficult for me to say, but, I wouldn't feel right if I didn't say it. I mean, I love you guys.
Bob Newhart crying. I think that he was shocked that it meant as much to him as it did that moment. I think was shocking. I don't think he anticipated that at all.
This is no laughing matter. I wish it were, but it isn't.
He didn't mind going up because he thinks the audience loves that.
I am.
Bob, from one side, he'd look perfectly normal. And on Bill's side, the side Bill was looking at, he'd be going, making faces. So he'd crack Bill up.
Don't say anything.
And then Bob would go, hey, Bill, come on. Come on, time's valuable here.
I wasn't going to say anything. You lost your feather.
I never had that problem with anyone ever. But him, I could just look at him, and it was just, and it's terrible when you can't stop laughing.
I had such a problem with it that I took a thumbtack off the bulletin board and I pressed it into my hand to keep from laughing.
My wife came to see the rehearsal, and afterwards she said, I don't ever want you to tell me how hard you have to work. I was there for 2.5 hours, and all you did was laugh.
I just pulled off what could be the greatest practical joke in history. You know how Stephanie is always so worried about her weight? I turned her scale up 2 pounds.
If Tom Poston would do something funny, Bob, they would get silly. They wouldn't stop laughing. They wouldn't stop laughing in front of the audience.
And you two are terrible.
And I'm supposed to be the adult, trying to control these two. They would just laugh more.
To have one hit show is like a lifetime opportunity that visits very, very seldom, but to have two back-to-back for 14 years, it's something else, believe me.
I don't think the Newhart series was groundbreaking. It felt like it was actually going back to a previous decade. It had more of the rhythm of the Andy Griffith Show and some of those shows. Newhart was designed to be a different rhythm than the other shows that were on at that time.
That wasn't the only show that Bob thought of. There were 10 presentations, writers coming to him all the time, producers coming to him all the time. He had to pick exactly what was right for himself and for what his audience was, and he did.
There was a certain amount of trepidation going into a new series that he was, obviously concerned and couldn't help but compare it to the previous experience.
I'm taking a break. It's my favorite program.
We were aware there were going to be comparisons about who played Bob's wife in the Newhart series.
The part of Joanna was by far and away the most difficult part of the Newhart experience because Suzanne cast such a large shadow.
I felt I had to explain to her, Mary, you've got one of the toughest jobs because they're going to compare you to Suzanne, and we had a certain kind of chemistry, and it's very hard to catch lightning in a bottle a second time, but we were able to.
You are the most unromantic man I've ever met. And I wouldn't marry you a second time if you were the last unromantic man on earth.
Wait a minute. Cutums?
The pilot was a wonderful, wonderful show. I think everybody knew when he gave that speech to that group of women about the historical significance of the inn, we knew we had a winner.
Ladies, according to my information, in the winter of 1775, when all your ancestors were staying here, the Stratford was not so much an inn as it was a house of, let me put it this way. There's every reason to believe you may not be so much daughters of the War for Independence as you are daughters of a 3-day past.
When you're doing another show, if you try to reinvent yourself too much, you will lose the audience.
You're boring. They're just not looking for that.
You're kidding.
And then there's that darn stammer of yours. Makes you sound unsure of yourself.
Well, how can they say that?
It's courageous to do another version of who you are, and I think that's what he did and was after.
The thing that was the most similar about the two shows is that he was surrounded by wacky characters to react to.
Frankly, Dick, being attractive can be a real burden.
Yes, it's true.
You don't know how lucky you are.
To deal with those characters that you saw nowhere else on television. And yet they were lovable characters. He never made fun of them. He was never an actor or performer to be above the show. And I thought that was very important.
Hi. I'm Larry. This is my brother Daryl. This is my other brother Daryl. I'm Larry. This is my brother Daryl, and this is my other brother Daryl. I'm Larry. This is my brother Daryl. This is my other brother Daryl.
Oh, hi, guys.
These gentlemen have a problem.
I know.
People can say things to Bob or his character, and you see him thinking.
Bob is so good at leaving a space.
You'll be following in the footsteps of the great leaders of Vermont.
Well, I guess I would have. I mean, you know, it's really an honor to even be considered in the same breath with people like.
It's the time you take that makes it different and makes it funnier.
It has its roots going back to Jack Benny doing slow burns, but Bob went beyond a slow burn. Bob was like a slow, damp, smoky fizzle. That he took that gift of doing nothing to the absolute limit and made it do everything.
Ethan Allen and his Green Mountain Boys.
Thank God.
He ran the best stage in the business. First of all, his philosophy was learn it and do it and go home. Not, this is my life, let's stay here forever.
He picked the writers, he picked the directors. He was concerned that he had the best professional help. And he could tell when something wasn't right and would sit down and say, look, this isn't working, we've got to do this. But in a way that I'd never quite seen it done, still letting people do their work.
Bob pretended that everyone else knew what they were doing except Bob. Baloney.
He's not as confused as he looks.
You know, a lot of people don't have family. You know, just think of us as your family.
Do you think of me as your family?
Sure.
Do you love me? He'll fool you. He'll let on that he's in deep water, but he's swimming and saving everybody else.
You're a nice guy.
He would give away all of the good lines to everyone else, and he was just the sort of audience's point of view, every man's point of view to everyone around him. That's very unusual.
The audience was everything to Bob, and I learned that anybody who's done stand-up puts the audience first. Nothing matters except the audience.
I'm really confused right now. I'm having a lot of mixed feelings.
What are you confused about?
Love and lust.
If there's an audience there to laugh, he is so focused on that, has such an ear for it. I've never seen it so precise and so fine-tuned as it is with him.
See if I have a dictionary.
Comedians usually separate themselves from the audience and sort of guide them and then get a large following. He trusted the audience to be as smart as him. He never talked down to the audience.
We did a show where somebody had to do a monologue on the phone. They worked and worked and worked and worried and worked, and finally Bob said, "'Tain't easy, is it?"
We closed the series on a brilliant episode that's still talked about today. Smart enough note to leave them wanting more, to leave them laughing, and that was a great episode that took 99% of the people who saw it and who worked on it by surprise.
Honey.
We could hear the audience as soon as they brought up the lights, and there was just 2 people in a bed.
Honey, wake up. You won't believe the dream I just had.
First, you think, wait, what's that? Wait, that's their old bed. Wait, that's the old, wait, that's Suzanne. Wait, oh, this is great.
Then when the lights came on and Suzanne rose up out of the bed, the audience went crazy.
All right, Bob. What is it?
I was an innkeeper in this crazy little town in Vermont.
After far too many decades in this business, I'm pretty surprise-proof, but I almost fell out of my chair.
The maid was an heiress. Her husband talked in alliteration. The handyman kept missing the point of things. And then there were these 3 woodsmen, but only one of them talked.
That settles it. No more Japanese food before you go to bed.
It was just an astonishing, surprising, wonderful, unbeatable finish.
And I was married to this beautiful blonde.
Go back to sleep, Bob.
Good night.
It was a joy to see on Bob's face the response the audience had, and to realize how much they adored him and what he was and what he is, and the history he had brought from the first show to this show.
What do you mean, beautiful blonde?
Go to sleep, Emily. You know, you really should wear more sweaters.
What are the chances? I mean, he always says Lucy did it, but not like he did it. What are the chances of being on 2 decades in the top 10 practically, or the top 20 at least? 2 decades.
Can I just sit here as a witness and say that's extraordinarily difficult to do?
Bob painted a sort of peaceful way in which to present comedy. Those are almost contradictory terms in presenting comedy, because comedy's an aggressive form.
The stereotype of people who become performers, become actors, is they're look at me people. They want to get out there and show you their stuff. And Bob, I certainly identify with Bob in that way, that he's very introspective, it seems to me.
He was kind of under the radar, you know, and unexpected. He's smart. He's taken the tiniest things and made them as important as we sometimes make tiny things.
There were 2 later shows that he did. The first was Bob in 1992.
They tried to make him assertive and combative. It didn't work. He's got to react. He can't push him ahead.
I then was approached a couple of years after that to do a show called George and Leo. So I agreed to do it. They put us on Monday night, a good time slot. It didn't work.
I think it broke his heart. I mean, it was quite a shock to Bob, who was the golden boy, you know.
If I can not humbly point to myself, I can say that Bob Newhart's legacy is certainly one of hair loss. And that's something that's gone on for many of us, that we're so inspired by Bob's hairline that we just, took it on as our own, and that's something he can always be proud of.
This may come as a shock to you, but in high school, I was considered great looking.
You're kidding!
I think it was my hair. I had great hair. I was the first kid in school to ever have a flat top with a ducktail.
John Belushi surprised the dickens out of me when he said, "You worked with Newhart. What's that like?" He said, "He is my idol." John Belushi.
there's just no getting around it. I certainly was influenced by Bob Newhart, and I don't know if I know how. If I was doing his routines in front of a class when I was 10 years old, there's no getting around that he influenced me.
Richard Pryor looked up at me, he said, I stole your album. I said, what? He said, I stole your album. He said, in Peoria. He said, I went into the record store and I put it in my jacket and I walked out. That's only he can do it. To have your album stolen by Richard Pryor is quite, quite an achievement.
I think he's one of a kind. You know, I think in a world of imitation, he's the real McCoy. I really do. And I think that's why he's still around decades later.
I don't know what I thought he was going to do after he stopped doing the situation comedy, but I didn't think that he would be doing Desperate Housewives. I don't think he's one of the housewives. I'm not sure.
Comedians can turn around and be dramatic actors, and he proved it and continues to prove it, because I guess it takes a burden off, too, that you don't have to be funny all the time. You can just be real.
Have you had suicidal thoughts?
Yes, yes. In the 7th grade, I was a pudgy child.
If you don't answer the question seriously, I'll put you on a psychiatric hold. Have you ever considered suicide?
Look, I'm a 71-year-old man who's going blind. I've considered everything. I'd be crazy if I did.
Dr. Lewis, I didn't mind rolling in.
Do me a favor. Will you talk to someone about these issues?
What issues?
Your diminished visual capacity, your compromised ability to self-medicate, the depression.
Let me see if I understand that. You won't keep me here involuntarily if I volunteer.
Very good. Not funny. I told him I didn't think he was all that funny in anything else he did either, but he hit me in the mouth.
I call it my first intentionally dramatic role on television, because I had done other roles that I thought were going to turn out comedic, but turned out tragic.
And the great thing was that when he did ER, he was nominated for an Emmy, which is great, you know, because a comedian being nominated for a dramatic part, yes.
Annabella, who's one of my granddaughters, is somewhat confused. She knows that I'm Poppy. She also knows that I'm something called Bob Newhart, whatever that is. and she also knows that I'm an elf.
Buddy, are you okay?
I'm sorry, Papa. Just need some alone time.
Buddy, I think we have to talk. Buddy, I think there's something I probably should tell you. You probably should have found out a long time ago.
The reason that Bob Newhart has transcended any particular generation is because he hasn't tried to be of any generation. He's been himself. That's why he still today can be Elf's dad.
He just has that gift of bringing you along with him into his, button-down mind, unbuttoning his button-down mind, I guess you'd say.
He's got a statue. Who in this business has a statue? He has, which is quite nice. A lot of pigeons go, there's the Newhart job. They leave a message.
He's easy to miss if you're putting together big icons, but he belongs up there with all of them because he just carved out a piece for himself, and no one has stepped into that territory.
From records, from stand-up, from radio, from television, motion pictures. For a quiet guy, he's had a very noisy career.
His legacy is not that he was the funniest, not that he was the most original. Bob was the most American.
I think the key to his longevity is that everybody recognizes him. He has been at everybody's Thanksgiving dinner table.
His impact is, like his series, continuous. There's a lot of folks like me who are carrying on the tradition. It's that whole school of deadpan comedy that goes back to Buster Keaton and Stalin.
I think he's revolutionary in some quiet, small way. And I really like that. I don't think he's an angel.
Oh, I love him. I love him. If he were here, I'd be licking his face. That's what he's afraid of.
I don't understand how he's able to maintain this pace of his, because he is still appearing in venues all over the country. He's still making movies.
And I think he's having the best time of his life right now. I think he is. I think he's really enjoying what he's doing.
Yahoo! The reason I still tour, and as you say, I could just rest on my laurels, to me, that's Sunset Boulevard. You know, that's sitting in a darkened room, having Eric von Stroheim come in and ask me which episode of the Bob Newhart Show or Newhart I'd like to watch today. I don't think of myself as a gambler, but I guess I'm a gambler. I guess it's that risk of, is it going to work tonight? That's the adrenaline. That's the high, is when it does work. And correspondingly, the low is when it doesn't work. You face that each and every time.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Newhart!
To learn more about Bob Newhart, visit pbs.org.
Now, you think he's a gentle everyman. He is a crazy, wild, crazy man. Oh, are we rolling? Oh, I didn't know that.
Right? Bob, I'm so sorry. This started out to be about you and a reflection, look back on your career, but there hasn't been enough time to squeeze you in, what with me and all.
The main difference between Bob on stage and Bob off stage is that when he's off stage, he's not actually on the stage. Other than that, there's no difference.
American Masters is made possible by the National Endowment for the Arts, because a great nation deserves great art.